Okay, we are going to start our meeting tonight with announcements, and our first announcement is our new animal control officer, James Ferry. So, welcome, and Jeff, are you going to do a short introduction, and then if you want to just come to the mic and say hello, so we can all put a name to the face.
All right, so tonight we're really excited and fortunate to welcome aboard Mr. James Ferry, who's our new animal control officer for Princeton. Jim has been serving the residents and visitors of Princeton since 2007 as an EMT with the Princeton First Aid and Rescue Squad. And in 2014, he was hired by Princeton Police Department as a dispatcher until he recently accepted the position as animal control officer with Princeton. We're very excited to have him aboard, as I mentioned. We've got a lot of work for him to do. And I'll keep it short and sweet, and I'll allow James to fill in the rest.
We don't make it easy for you, right? Yeah.
Is that better? Whoa. All right, let's start over. Public service since 2007 with the Princeton First Aid and Rescue Squad. Last 4 years as a police dispatcher with the police department. Very excited to be in this position, working side by side with a accredited police department and health department. Couldn't be in a better position. We do have a lot of work to do. I want to thank Montgomery Township for the past year of covering us in our time of need. And I don't live far away, so whenever there's a need for me, I'll be there pretty quickly. So all times of the night, I'll be here. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Welcome. All right, and then we'll continue with other announcements. And I'd like to start with Mr. Cohen. Any announcements for this evening?
I don't have any this evening.
Ms. Howard?
I want to welcome Jim, and we're going to have you come to our next Board of Health meeting and our next Animal Control Advisory Committee meeting, so welcome aboard.
Any announcements?
I
Mr. Quinn?
do two quick announcements. The Princeton Environmental Commission is hosting members of the Princeton University Sustainability Team led by Ron McCoy at its next meeting on February 28th. The commission hopes this will be the start of a partnership with the university where we can both share best practices and each group can keep abreast of what the other is doing. And related topics, Sustainable Princeton will be reporting on the town's carbon footprint at a program on Wednesday, March 7th at the library. And I think that I speak for all my colleagues in saying that we're grateful to Mr. Cohen for agreeing to be council's representative to the Climate Action Plan Steering Committee being assembled by Sustainable Princeton. I look forward to hearing his updates.
Great, congratulations. And Ms. Fraga?
Yes, just one very quick announcement for recreation. The construction contract for Mary Moss Playground is on the agenda for tonight. So I understand Ms. Stockton is here to answer any questions council may have. And there are obviously other things that Recreation Department is doing as far as programming. I will just submit them to be included in the agenda.
Okay, terrific. And that's exciting news about next step for Mary Moss Playground. I just had a few announcements. The first is Council's going to be having a special meeting, a work session on the budget, and that's going to be next Wednesday morning from 8:30 to 10 a.m. in the community room, which is the first room as you come in from the parking lot. And that will be open meeting to the public, but it'll be a little bit more informal. We'll be sitting around a table and just received our budget books, so we'll be digging in on Wednesday morning. Also, on Friday, next Friday, February 23rd, I'll be in the public library lobby from 8:30 to 10 a.m. for my monthly Meet the Mayor open office hours. and anybody's welcome to come by to that. And then our next council meeting is going to be on February 26th. And we're going to be holding that meeting in the other municipal building, Monument Hall, and that's to accommodate a conversation we're going to be having with President Chris Eisgruber from Princeton University. And the discussion with President Eisgruber is going to start at 8 p.m., but the meeting is going to start like normal at 7 p.m. with other business. Okay. Are there any staff announcements? No. Staff announcements? Okay. Then we will move on to comments from the public, and we'll start with the sign-up sheet that was on the podium, and then we'll open it up to anybody else who'd like to speak. So first is Catherine Iriff. And there is a timer, I think, for 3 minutes. So if you can kindly try to keep your comments to 3 minutes, that would be great.
I have to announce myself. I'm Catherine Iriff. I live on Dodds Lane in Princeton, and I want to tell you why I'm here. We happen to have rather a good grapevine that communicates on Dodds Lane, and because of that grapevine, I was one of the volunteers helping to take people's belongings and pack them at Griggs Farm on 2 weekends in a row. And it occurred to me that I should write this letter to you. And the stupid thing is that I brought my spec case and there are no specs inside it. So I don't know. I'll read it slowly, but the light's not terribly good here. Can I move further up to the light or not? Oh, down there. Okay, these things are all very complicated. Okay. And I'm addressing this to... I can sit down. Oh, that's very convenient. Can you hear me now? Okay. I would like you all, as our governing body, to consider having a process that could be implemented if in the future we were ever to have some sort of a disaster. I suggest that it could be a special fund, not for profit. This fund would be there to kick in immediately. The health department and the housing department would know that there would be a specific trained individual to turn to that would also have the authority to help them administer relief immediately. It could be a monetary fund or something else. The response would be coordinated by the person, and guidelines for dealing with any disaster would already be in place. The fund would be ready to be activated at that time. By giving your attention to this now, Princeton would be better prepared than it was in December. Respectfully, Catherine Iriff. I think, judging from what's been going on, there's been an enormous amount of help from all sectors of the community. And I turned up, and it was very cold, and I thought, well, I better go and see what's going on. And I decided, well, I've got a pair of hands, and they work. So I kicked in. But it was a disaster for so many people. And it doesn't seem to have gone terribly well because nobody was prepared for a disaster in Princeton, and that's why I've written this letter. And I hope that when things calm down a bit, that you can address this issue. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'd like to call Martha Friend.
Hi, Martha Friend. Oh boy, that's loud. I live in Lawrence Township, taught here for 23 years, grew up here in Princeton, so my roots are deep, and Princeton will always be home. So I am here to speak a little bit differently about the same issue, and I'm going to watch my time. You better start it because I can ramble on. First, I wanted to publicly thank some of the organizations in Princeton, very separately from the incredibly generosity that we know is here in Princeton, but some of the organizations that donated to some of those work weekends that we've had, multiple work weekends at Griggs Farm. So George from Ace Hardware just basically said to me, we'll give you what you need. Come for gloves, come for bags, whatever you need, because residents were told they have to get everything out of their apartments, regardless of flood damage, smoke, fire, everything out, even if it was going in the dumpsters. So you could imagine on the first meeting I went to, there was some shock with those residents, and I assured them Princeton would be there for them, and Princeton has shown up. So George from Ace Hardware, Hoagie Haven donated tremendous food for everybody there the first time. Jen and Ken Carson at Lily Pies also donated a couple times because we have to feed the folks. We had a fabulous member of council come and join us, and I know Liz had hoped to join us a couple times. PRAA made generous donations. So as you've heard alluded to, there was a problem. We had a hole in the help for these folks. Taking nothing away from Princeton Community Housing and their 24/7 work, Princeton Human Services and their 24/7 work, there still was a problem, and balls were dropped. And just one little example that we need to do better next time. There was a resident that I was assisting. She said, could you just help me move everything into the provided dumpsters? I galvanized the troops, we showed up, and her apartment actually wasn't affected by smoke or water. There was a hole in the ceiling, and she was told she had to have everything out. And I just asked her why we were throwing all of these things in the dumpster. And she said, I cannot afford the year-long storage fee. And she's moving into an efficiency with help. Folks helped her to find it, but she didn't feel like she could even bring her mattress. It was that small. She's asked me for help getting her a blow-up mattress, one little table, and she took one fold-up chair. I implored her to let me find a donor. We will find a donor for her. We'll find a storage unit for her. We'll find a truck to get there. And I should point out that Princeton Public Schools also let us have their box truck and a driver. I've asked them for, again, this weekend, because we still have a couple folks that need to get everything out. But that's just kind of the situation we're in. So we know monies were there, but there was a problem. So as Lindy had said, we have to do this better. There are still people in incredible crisis. I just wanted to say that and acknowledge all the tremendous folks in the community. I just put out an ask and said, somebody needs help to stay in the hotel, can you help? And there have been some very generous people. Still need some more generous donors, so if anybody wants to help, you can talk to me after, but thank you.
Thanks. And
Can I just say, just briefly, I think that the community owes Martha Friend, and I know she's not doing this because it's something that she's being paid to do or something because she wants to be famous, but she has gone above and beyond for so many folks during this time of need that we just want to say thank you to you. And I agree that no one's ever prepared for a disaster of any magnitude. But the folks of Princeton and surrounding areas, they have stepped up to the plate. Many people, decent people, have come out to really try to help. In the future, I think that we'll look at ways that we can improve, maybe some of the ways that we've dealt with this. But overall, with the magnitude of what occurred, and I think maybe 3 or 4 families still left maybe uncertain at the present time out of almost 30. I think that that's pretty good, but we're still not going to let those people fall by the wayside. So thank you so much.
yeah, Mr. Cohen?
I just wanted to chime in that as the liaison to the Emergency Preparedness Committee, while most people aren't prepared for a disaster, hopefully we can be prepared for a disaster. And in fact, while this kind of fire is unpredictable, there are lots of other kinds of natural disasters that are predictable and are increasing in frequency. And so I think it's a really good idea to develop a funding mechanism, whether it be having some kind of insurance for the municipality that would be sort of like uninsured motorist insurance, but insurance to help cover uninsured, so that we can be more responsive in that sort of way. So I will bring that up with the Emergency Preparedness Committee and see if we can brainstorm a little on how to address that.
Okay, terrific. Thank you. Is there anybody else from the public who'd like to speak on an item that's not already on the agenda?
Good evening, Council and Mayor. My name is Junior Romero with Food and Water Watch. We're a New Jersey Environmental Group. First of all, I wanted to start by thanking the Council. I'm not sure from the last time that I came if I thanked y'all for passing a resolution opposing the compressor station in Franklin Township. As you know, that it could possibly affect the air here in the Princeton area. Benzene, methane, carcinogens that are going to be coming out of a proposed compressor 24 hours a day. So thank you very much. What y'all have there is a resolution that Atlantic City has passed not too long ago, pretty much urging New Jersey to get us off fossil fuels. The last time I approached the council and the mayor on this issue, we were talking about a pledge. If you look on page 2, now we have over 60 elected officials in New Jersey who have committed to supporting this pledge of supporting 100% renewable energy. By the time that climate scientists agree we need to reach to avoid a climate catastrophe, a tipping point, as some call it. The Atlantic City resolution is in front of you. As you know, Atlantic City is one of the only places in New Jersey that has offshore wind. If it was up to me, we'd have offshore wind all over the coast, and luckily we have a governor now who supports a proposition like that. There's actually statewide legislation now sponsored by Senator Deiganen, S-1405, and Assemblyman Eustace and Gusiora around this area. That's A-1823. Basically, it would increase the renewable portfolio standards that utilities must purchase 100% of their renewable energy by this goal, by 2035. It's very aggressive, it's very progressive, but I know that Princeton has never shied away from strong progressive policies. Really I wanted to, and thank you for the mayor. I believe I saw you at the mayor's climate summit. We were glad to have you speak there. We were one of the co-sponsors of the event, along with our partners at New Jersey League of Conservation Voters and Sustainable Jersey. Really, we're just approaching councils, and we've had some conversations, and I would like to urge the council and the mayor to support passing a resolution like the one in Atlantic City that you have there, supporting this goal of getting us off fossil fuels and onto 100% renewable energy. Lastly, the draft environmental impact statement for the compressor station project is going to come out. We're anticipating around March, and we're going to be generating comments into the Federal Regulatory Commission that approves these gas projects. And we look forward to the continued partnership with Princeton on fighting this fracked gas project proposed for our communities. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I will refer this maybe to Mr. Quinn to take to the Environmental Commission. I know Princeton's in the middle of planning for a climate action plan for the community, so I think we want to do something in conjunction with that, but I would recommend PEC take a look at this and make a recommendation to council, and we can put it on as a resolution if that's the recommendation of the PEC.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. The PEC knows that this is coming, and Mr. Romero approached me individually to sign the pledge, and I thought it would be better if we as a council as a whole passed a resolution, and I thank him for providing us with a template here to make it easy. So we'll refer this to PEC, and we should have a resolution by next month. So, thanks.
Okay, terrific. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak on anything that's not already on the agenda? Okay. Moving on, I'd like to invite up Jamie Volkert from Palmer Square.
Hi, thank you for having me tonight. In front of you, I believe you have a copy of the 2018 event calendar for Palmer Square Management. You'll notice that this year we've added quite a few events to the schedule. We haven't taken any away, so we have our regular annual events, plus we've added a decent amount. Each month we have at least one large event going on, and we've incorporated some local charities into some of the events as well. So just to go through a couple of them, in March, we've added a first egg hunt. We haven't had an egg hunt before. We'll do about 100 children on the green, and we've asked for a minimum $5 donation to participate, and that'll go to the Mercer County chapter of the Sunshine Foundation. Because in April, we've also added a Mom and Me Princess Shopping Spree Day, where we're going to get our princesses from the Sunshine Foundation, and that way we can write a check to them instead of to pay actors to come out. And that'll just be a tea party with mom and shopping around the square, and a lot of princesses. They can get their pictures taken and do different things. We've also added, we have summer music every year, but we've added it to the spring and to the fall just to get some action out there on the weekends. We don't have other big events going on. Obviously, we're going to participate in the communiversities and the Pi Days and the other community events that we've done year over year. In June, Jazams is looking to do a block party. We might actually tone that down a little bit this year and keep it a concert on the green or something of that matter, but it'll probably be a little bit smaller. That's on June 22nd. We have the movie nights again this summer, one a month, June, July, and August. In July, we'll have just the summer concert series starts, and that's every Saturday. We've changed the time. It used to be 2 to 4, but we felt like too many people were already doing something at 2 o'clock, so we're going to try and do a 12 to 2. This way, hopefully people can come, maybe purchase lunch, sit out on the green, and then spend the day in town. So we're going to try a new time slot. In August, we have the the sidewalk sale that they do every year. It's time sensitive based on when the retailers have clearance items they could put out. Jazz Feast will continue again in September, but we've also added some fall music to the calendar. We did this last year, and we got rained out a couple of days, but it went really well on the days that we did have it. It's gorgeous through the fall, so keep people coming out, hopefully. We added a fall festival last year, which had a ton of traction, and it was relatively simple: music, food on the green, and then shopping and promos around the square. We got as much foot traffic in a couple hours as we did on a Jazz Feast day. So, and it was really a nice event. So we're hoping to do that again. Holiday, the holiday events that we've had year over year. We've got the tree lighting, the menorah lighting, the holiday jam with Princeton University. Last year we added a Winter Wonderland workshop. We did some photos with Santa. We have the carolers. So we really just do the full out holiday festivities. And that's really it.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's a busy year ahead.
I have a question.
Oh, sure, Mr. Quinn.
In the first paragraph of you talk about the right-of-way and the green. Is that owned by Palmer Square or by the municipality? And the reason I ask is that sometimes people have spontaneous demonstrations on Palmer Square, and several members of council were invited to one in August, and we were uncertain whether we were on public property or whether we were trespassing on private property, and we had about 500 people. It was the day after the Charlottesville terror attack.
Yeah, it's my understanding, and I'm not 100% sure on this answer, so I would have to double check with the executive team, but it's my understanding that Palmer Square owns it, but there's, we work together on all of the events that are held in the square. We get the town's approval on. We also, anybody that comes in to have an event on the square, we also name Princeton on their insurance waivers and such. So I'm not sure the exact answer to that.
I do think that the town owns that park, because we've gone through things over years where we've have various issues, and I do think that the town owns the green part, where in front of the post office, where the old post office was.
Yeah, I don't know the official answer.
Yeah.
I know that we ask permission to use it, and I know that other organizations can't really do an event there without coming to us as well. So I'm not 100% sure. I could
is. You
find
don't
out.
have no more questions.
Yep.
It is. You don't have to.
All right.
No, the official answer is the town
So
owns it.
in the case I cited, were someone to approach us and say, we want to have a demonstration tomorrow on Palmer Square, do we contact you, or?
No, there's a form online, actually, and it goes through the clerk's office.
Okay,
Yeah, and it's usually in Tiger Park, which is the
smaller part.
piece
Yeah.
up by Nassau Street.
Okay, thank you.
Did you want
Oh,
to?
I have another issue. I thank you for all you do to make our town. Palmer Square does a really good job of all these things. And I just wanted to remind or tell you about the issue with when we had the Eclipse program at the library, and the library got Eclipse glasses. It turned out to be a really difficult situation because we were overwhelmed by people coming and there weren't enough glasses, and it caused a lot of hard feelings. So that's one thing. And the other thing was, when I was a kid, I went to the Easter egg hunt every year and never once got an egg. And so I'm saying, please make sure and have tons of eggs.
I just ordered 1,200 eggs for 100 children, and we're going to have tons of chocolate. I have 3 children, and I was very worried about that myself. So there's going to be age limits, different sections, and plenty of eggs and prizes and chocolates for everybody. So
Okay, great. All right, thank you.
thank you.
Plea for
Don't
equity.
stand around for any more questions. I think it's like, all right. So now we come to, we have a public hearing tonight on a transfer of a plenary retail distribution license, and this is Resolution 1863, resolution authorizing a person-to-person and place-to-place transfer of a plenary retail distribution license 1114-44-015-008. Heretofore issued to Princeton Wines, LLC, 21 Spring Street, Princeton, to Princeton Market, Incorporated, 301 North Harrison Street, Princeton. There is an objector to this liquor license transfer, and the objector has asked that we move the hearing to March 12th. Did you want to speak tonight, too?
No,
or?
no, I just said
So if it's okay with council, then I would ask for just a motion to move this to our March 12th agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All right, all in favor of moving it to March 12th?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, if that's okay, if either of you want to speak tonight, you can, or it probably makes most sense to hold it over till March 12th.
I appreciate the council's considerations based on the facts presented in my letter earlier today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. We'll see you in about a month. Okay, and then we'll move on to reports. And our first report tonight is from Chief Sutter. And we have the November 2017 and December 2017 police reports.
Thank you, Mayor. Just outside the police reports, I wanted to highlight a couple things for Mayor and Council I thought were interesting for you to note. First, in 2017, almost a year ago, we had spoken here about addressing the issue of overtime and lowering overtime across the board within the department. And as you know, we work within the confines of a collective bargaining agreement when it comes to overtime, and it becomes difficult sometimes to get creative and work around that. I will say we made significant, what I consider departmentally significant savings this year in overtime. And the reason why I highlight it is not just because of the fiscal savings, but it really illustrated something that I wanted to bring to your attention, and that's the willingness of our police union to work with us. And it's something that you don't find maybe a lot, maybe you do, but for me it's something that's very important and special for us all to know, is that when I brought this issue up last year, the PBA leadership sat down and we discussed it, and we really, there was no, arguing or going back and forth. It was like, how do we make this work? And they made concessions along the way that were still within the confines of the contract, but it just meant a lot to me, and I wanted to relay that to you, that we really met this objective, and it was based on the men and women of the department willing to work for the community and the department. I just thought that was an interesting little piece of information to bring up that I was kind of proud of last year. Moving forward to 2018, I thought I would just highlight some very broad goals and objectives that we set. As you know, we're in the last year now of our strategic plan that we had completed several years ago, and we actually hit the objectives real early. It's complete. So that's the good news. I guess the bad news is we have to reinvent some more objectives and goals going forward. So, the one thing that really comes up a lot, we see it in our report, we see it in the different emails and information that you and I also get, it's traffic, right? It remains a super important issue. And we began in 2017 to really take a more analytical approach to it. More specifically, we give a lot of statistics and numbers and things, but what do they mean, and how do we use them to make real gains in the community? So we started that last year by measuring, and this was part of our strategic plan actually measuring our high accident areas, taking actions to reduce the accidents in those areas, and for not just for the interim, but on a long-term basis. And that's the real challenge. You can go out and put an officer out and conduct a speeding enforcement in a high accident area, and you'll see a reduction temporarily, and then you see it go back up again. So we're looking at long-term types of things, and that is a real ongoing process, and we've worked very closely with our engineering partners to address engineering issues and other traffic-related structural issues in these areas. So that's going to continue in 2017. But on that same note, we're really looking at our pedestrian and bicycle safety initiatives a lot this year. In addition to our Street Smart campaign, we're really going to make, and I will say our officers make I think a real robust effort, but I also think it's maybe not viewed a lot or seen a lot. It's done behind the scenes. So we want to we want to announce more of the things we're doing and be more robust with that and more out front with that, and not just statistically, but again in real gains, lowering pedestrian accidents, lowering bicyclist versus motor vehicle accidents, things like that. So we're working with that's one of the charges of our traffic bureau, and I think you're going to see some kind of, I also want to develop some creative type of ideas too that get people involved in more educational type initiatives, which help, especially with our children. So we'll be working on that. Mayor, one of the things we spoke about in 2017 was bike patrol. And we were trying to think of a way to have it as a more constant type of patrol in town, because it is very popular. It gets a lot of positive feedback. So we thought at the end of last year, and what we did was, instead of having it just come out of our community policing unit, we've actually are certifying officers on each squad. So each squad that works patrol, plus our community policing unit. So each squad will have 2 officers that are certified in bike patrol. That will guarantee every shift during, normal hours, which are probably up until midnight or so, depending on crowds, that we'll have an officer on bike patrol. So you'll have more visibility, it'll be more constant, it'll be every day, and something that people will see more often. We're talking about ease of reporting. Jenna, we talked about that last time, about having people, some people like having a police officer come to their house and having that type of contact. Some just want to go online or file a report through the computer online. So we're working on getting that streamlined. And then finally, last year we formed a officer wellness committee. And we really looked at, we get a lot of studies that we see, and the life of a police officer sometimes, just the mere scheduling, habits that are formed because of scheduling become unhealthy, and over years, they really do take their toll. I mean, it's not uncommon for officers to work 36 hours, in a weekend and then be called in mandatory overtime and have to work another 12-hour shift, and that takes a toll. So we were thinking of ways to, not just maybe through physical fitness, which a lot of our officers are engaged in, but just overall wellness and fitness, how we can promote that within the department. So we came up with a lot of different ideas, and we're implementing them this year. But one I wanted to highlight was Mr. Grosser's idea, actually, that we actually started today, was one of the kickoff meetings we had. And we're working with the Health Department and the American Heart Association on a reducing blood pressure initiative within the department. Hypertension tends to be a common theme with police officers, so for a lot of different reasons. So we're going to work on and I have to say it's getting a lot of interest, and people are interested in doing it, even our younger officers that aren't necessarily thinking that way. So it's about getting people thinking that way and showing our officers that we care and that we're investing in their health and their safety. And I think what that'll do is hopefully, in terms of, benefits, not just their health, but we have our officers here more, lower sick time, they're on the road, they're giving better service, they're in better health, and everybody reaps the benefits of that. So just very briefly and quickly, I thought I would outline some of those broad things for you, and anything I can answer on the actual report, I'd be glad to answer.
Great. Thanks, Chief. Ms. Hart?
Thanks, Chief. Yeah, I'm going to pick up on that theme, actually, and I want to encourage everybody who's here or watching to go watch that. It's only about a 5-minute video that the department produced on sort of I hope everyone, it was a really nice video. I'm looking now, it's not on the main website, but you might want to put it there.
Okay.
But I think it's on Facebook. And it's sort of a mini history of the department since consolidation. And it's really interesting to be able to look back. First of all, it made me feel old that it's been 5 years. Chief, it's really nice the way it sort of summarizes all the progress we've made. We made as a municipality, but the department in merging two departments, creating a culture of excellence, and all the outreach that's done and strengthening community ties. It's really a lovely video and very quick but succinct way that addresses that. So thank you. I don't know what role you played in it.
It was all
I mean, you're starring in it.
I was
don't know if you're also
feature,
right.
It was all Sergeant Williams. It was his invention,
Hollywood's
his
calling yet,
production.
but yeah.
I just kind of narrated. I was a narrator. That's what I served as.
But it really is great, and I think it'll make everyone realize how much has happened. I mean, it discusses 2 accreditation processes, strategic planning, creation of the Safe Neighborhoods Unit. I mean, all of these things that we sort of forget how it's happened in actually in a pretty compressed time.
Right.
So congratulations.
Thank
you. To something perhaps a little more mundane, I was hoping you could give us an update because we've on the alarm registration work, because I think that was an interest some of us and to our new colleagues. We enacted a new ordinance last year requiring registration for alarms, and I think you reported to Public Safety Committee that it's gone well.
Yes.
But I think it would be important to sort of let everybody know how that's going.
Absolutely. That process went extremely well. It was a kind of a flawless process in that there were very little complaints. Our citizens were very cooperative and listening, and they seemed to be, on board with it and what it entailed. So far in, I guess, a couple of weeks that it was actually fully enforced, because January 31st is the date it actually becomes enforceable. No major issues, no enforcement actions. Enforcement is not the goal of this. It's compliance with the ordinance and getting it registered and minimizing the false alarms. The one issue we're having is getting some of our businesses registered. And we're trying to see where that loophole may be, and we're trying to get back out to the Merchants Association and follow up. Our Records Bureau is going to be working on that to try to kind of identify how we're missing and who we're missing and figure out what we need to do to follow up and get those people registered. But the good news is, if we do go to a business or a home that's unregistered, they'll get a notification from our officer, we'll leave a written notification, and all that person will have to do or business is follow the protocol on the form and get it registered. So I think over time, this will rectify itself. It's just that it wasn't as, the registrations maybe weren't as robust as we had hoped they would be at the beginning.
That's great news. I'm glad it's gone so smoothly. Thanks.
I'm excited to hear about the expansion of the police biking or
Great.
biking policing. But I have a question. You talked about expanding it to the various squads, and as a new member of council, I don't really know what the duties or the descriptions of those various squads are and how being on a bicycle might impair the ability of some of the officers to do what they're supposed to be doing, or?
Absolutely great question. So to break it down very simply, our patrol division is divided into 4 squads. And 2 platoons, they each work 2 sides of the schedule. They're 12-hour schedules. When 2 are working, 2 are off. So there's your 24-hour, 7 days a week coverage. On those shifts, officers are assigned to different assignments, different districts. And one of those assignments could be foot patrol in this central business district, or foot patrol in other areas. What we'll do is either when we have full staff, we'll supplement foot patrol with a bike or 2 officers. They, surprisingly enough, can get around and answer calls in their patrol area probably more readily and efficiently with a bicycle sometimes than they can with a vehicle. So it'll help in some instances, but in any event, every squad, even at minimum, should have enough to put 1 person on bike patrol absent some type of extenuating circumstance that requires them to be elsewhere.
Thank you.
Ms. Carmella?
Yeah. I know that you are, I mean, I have a feeling, but I think it might be a good idea to talk about that you do ongoing training about implicit bias and racial profiling and all, and I think it's called de-escalation. Is that the right word? Yeah, de-escalation.
Yes.
So maybe you want to talk about that just because it wasn't mentioned, and I think that you are doing it.
Yes, sure. So, and I'll just note, I'm currently working on the annual report where we'll actually have that exact topic highlighted. So, in both of these, the things you raised, implicit bias, discriminatory policing practices, and de-escalation, we've been training those for several years, for quite a long time, but it's become a state mandate within the last year. So basically the role or the approach we took was we use the state training now kind of to just supplement what we already do. It's good training. I'd argue some of our training that we did in-house was just as good or better, but we're supplementing that. And you know, the de-escalation techniques, just to put it very, I guess, oversimplify it, is often when an officer gets to, our traditional training has been to always, and this has been for a very long time, to very simply address a level of force with a level of force equal to or more than. And that's more or less in a physical type of altercation or more serious. What de-escalation training does is it trains the officers to look at it through a different optic and note that there are times when we can use our language. The course is called verbal judo that we use. There are words and ways and demeanor to take a situation in the other direction so that it doesn't come to a use of force situation. And I have to say our officers, and I should also state that we recruit now with these types of qualities in mind, and it's changed the way that we recruit and the type of officer we're looking for than we have traditionally. We're looking for well-rounded communicators. If you can't communicate, you have a difficult time de-escalating. So we've been very, very successful in getting that type of officer. And our anti-racial profiling training continues. We have strict policies with that we regularly monitor, and that'll be highlighted in our annual report is our risk assessment committee. I'm very, very proud of this, and it came through our strategic plan, and our Lieutenant Morgan took it to a next level. We use a risk assessment tool that looks for patterns of discriminatory policing on an aggregate level and on an individual level. We break it down across every type of policing, self-initiated policing activity that occurs, and we look for trends. We look for trends in the aggregate and on the individual level, and we monitor that quarterly, and we put the results of that report in our annual report so that the public can see it. And it's not, it goes beyond numbers. It really digs deep into all types of different activities, and I really don't know of anybody else. I think maybe big cities might be doing it in a different way, but you know, we have a peer committee. It's a lieutenant and officers' peers that serve on this committee and look at it so that officers don't view it as a disciplinary type action, but it's a peer review. It's officers looking at officers and their actions and making recommendations and things like that. So we'll hopefully have that out in March in our annual report.
Mr. Limerick?
Yeah. Thanks, Chief. Beautiful report as usual. Three things. One, again, this has happened in my neighborhood, Amazon.
Yeah.
Someone had opened the Amazon box and taken out the items. And I don't know who's doing this. I'm thinking it's someone that's walking. I'm not sure, because no one ever sees a car or anything, but I don't know who's doing this. But it's, I don't know if we can have somebody undercover up in a tree with binoculars. And when they see the person
I've
come
been
down
looking
with a
from
rope.
my office over there,
Yeah.
but so yes, yeah, to your point, and the number one thing we've been trying to do is get the message out. So you may have seen Sergeant Williams had put a lot of information out on social media on this, and we also do have different investigations ongoing. We're also partnering with Department of Public Safety at the university, who gets a lot of issues like this too.
Yeah.
We're working together and sharing information. It's it's not always so random as you might think. It can be, but it's also often targeted.
Oh.
So we look at both of those things and look for similar types of crimes around, and look for both things that are a crime of opportunity, and then there's crimes that are more targeted. So we look at both of those.
What do you mean by
types of
that,
actions.
by targeted?
Well, the crime of opportunity would be somebody walking by your house and seeing your
It's a
package
box.
there.
Yeah, it's a box.
And then there are groups that will
Drive
either
around.
have information or go around looking specifically, look in an area, target an area for that.
The other items are smaller. One is dog leash. Once the new guy get on board, I think that we need to enforce some of the dog leash.
Dog leash, okay.
Especially at CP.
Mhm.
They're letting the dog, they don't suppose that when kids are there, let the dogs off the leash.
Yep, absolutely.
The other thing, recruitment. I know we're recruiting several officers within the next 1 or 2 years. Is there a way that we can provide folks in Princeton so they can apply?
Yeah. Yeah, so absolutely. Recruitment, the first stage of our recruitment is just outreach. So we'll do a robust outreach for 6 months or more. The better part of 2018 will be just getting quality candidates to apply and introducing them to the department. So part of that will definitely be, we've historically, and it's kind of goes like this, recruited very successfully from Princeton, and in more recent years, it kind of came back. So we're certainly, that's a priority of ours, absolutely, and we'll keep that in mind with our recruiting team.
Ms. Varga?
Yes, thank you, Chief. Great report. I do have one question, though, because it's come up often, and when you mentioned training, when in that training, I do understand that officers, in certain instances, they can use discretion as to whether to issue a citation or a warning. And I wonder if in that training, how that is processed, how that discretion is going to be used, because when individuals compare notes as to what someone's experience was for a similar situation, and one got a ticket and the other person got a warning, how can we address that?
So that's a great question, and I guess there's a few things I would just hit on. Is to your exact point, the training, I guess, brings everyone aware to the biases that we hold and how we don't let them affect those exact decisions you just talked about, and how that can never, ever enter into policing in what we do. That I guess the first part is being aware that these things can exist in one's being, and that that they can't enter into policing, and to those decisions. I guess the next question becomes policy with regards to discretion. There are some things we can't by law allow to be discretionary. Like, for instance, the most basic is arrest in domestic violence situations. There are situations in domestic violence when there is no discretion, and everybody that commits a certain offense in domestic violence must be arrested. And that goes on into other crimes as well. And then you enter into like what might be the most common type of encounter you're talking about, which is a motor vehicle stop. And it's not lawful for us to talk about you must write a summons or you must issue a warning. That's not legal for us to do. That's based on officer discretion. That's where quotas come in. But what we do talk about, and I've really stressed this for a long time, is that I have really taken away a lot of the statistics that are included in here, especially summonses, when talk about motor vehicle enforcement. And I've taken away the idea that the more summonses you issue or the more arrests you make you a better police officer. And that's how we were gauged for a very long time on a national basis. And you were promoted that way, and you achieved success that way. And we are not thinking that way anymore. We're thinking in terms of results. So we put an officer out on a speeding detail where there's been a lot of complaints about speeding. And that officer is going to use discretion when he stops a speeding car. And we've talked to them about someone driving by a motor vehicle stop, seeing the lights on in a car, pulled over, automatically assumes, oh gosh, that person's getting a ticket, I need to slow down. So there's the effect right there for the time being, that those speeds start to slow down. So you've achieved the same effect. The person that got stopped is obviously being brought to the realization that they were going too fast, and they're hopefully not going to do it again. And everybody that's driving by is thinking that same thing. And you've kind of achieved what your goal is, maybe without a summons. Now, that person may have been stopped for speeding 15 times on that road that month. You know, I'm exaggerating it. But that may mean that he got or she got 15 warnings, and it would not be apropos for a warning to be issued. So I guess what I'm getting at is each of these cases is very fact sensitive. Every individual stop becomes fact sensitive. And I agree with you that the perception from the community and the country at large becomes that one person gets a summons and one person gets a warning based on things like race or other things. And that's a hard one to talk about and convince people that there's a lot of other facts that go into it. Some officers don't like issuing summonses. I'll tell you, they don't enjoy it. It's not one of their things that they like doing. Others, it's more easy. And we've probably both encountered officers like each of these, one that doesn't mind writing a summons and one that doesn't like it. But we talk about effects and results. So hopefully we can continue having these conversations publicly and let the public know the things that we consider and things like motor vehicle stops.
Thank you. I do have a follow-up question. I think it's going to be more difficult, maybe. I know it would be for me to answer. So if someone if you're responding to a call and if someone has a warrant, are they able to use any discretion in those situations?
No. Very, very bluntly, no. A warrant, and we've had a lot of conversations about this, and it's an issue that, especially in the minor motor vehicle warrants, that we struggle with because they're time-consuming. But the face of a warrant commands, and it says on this, any law enforcement officer is commanded to take this person by the court into custody. Mm-hmm. So you get into a situation where, if not affecting an arrest in that situation, you're violating the order of the court. And we take that very strictly. The fact of the matter is, a lot of these warrants are for minor things that tie up our officers for long periods of time with no real benefit on the backside. It's not really a public safety issue. In some cases, it's monetary fines, and that's just that's a fact. So we've been trying to address this on a lot of different levels, but it's bigger than just us.
Right. And would the officer be trained in those situations if it's someone that is obviously in need of assistance, even if they have to follow up on the warrant, would they be able to refer them to, let's say, Human Services or someone that
Again, each case is fact sensitive, and the danger we get into is that we encounter probably thousands of warrants a year, and every single case is fact sensitive. So none are the same. Everybody comes from a different situation. But for instance, we take people for medical care, psychiatric care, all types of different care in our custody. That comes first. So someone that has a warrant that's in need of psychiatric care, we take them for psychiatric care, and then we have to go through all types of protocols to get the warrant addressed through court. So these are each one is fact sensitive, I would say.
Thank you. You answered my question.
Well, I'm so glad you brought it up, Leticia, because it's something that we've struggled with, right? That under state law, there's no discretion. And actually, I've come to be convinced that actually sometimes having no discretion means fairer enforcement, that when law enforcement has discretion, that's when you can end up having profiling. But in this case, this is really a matter of state law, and it's something that we, a couple of years ago, got energized about, and then maybe need to revisit that issue of trying to sort of elevate at the state level, especially now that I think we have a new governor who's talking about some of these social justice issues and some changes that could happen at the state level. So your hands are really tied. Literally,
Yeah.
You have to enforce these arrest warrants, but it's something that maybe actually we could get traction at the state level, and so maybe at the next Public Safety Committee meeting we could talk about that, bringing this up. So thank you.
Thanks. Well, first, I just want to go back to your comment about the PBA and being able to work together with them for the overtime. So I want to say thank you. And having a good relationship with the PBA is a two-way street. So I want to just thank you for all the work you've put into making that functional and productive for everybody. So could you just give us an update? I know one of the big changes has been the new dispatch service, and can you just let us know how that transition is going and how it's working out?
Sure. I would say it's going very well. It's about, February 1st was the official kind of cutover where IXP began what we call sitting on the desk in communications. But I say that loosely, as we have assigned our personnel to sit right along with them. So kind of like a pilot, co-pilot situation. And I can anticipate this going on for probably, I guess each case is going to be different, but probably the better part of 2 months, month and a half, 2 months, where we're going to be putting personnel up there. I know Mr. DeShield and I talk regularly about how we make this efficient and how we can, because we are putting police officers up there to do it. So to answer your question, it's definitely, there's a learning curve, and it's kind of wide, but I see that getting better. And I really think, as I said to you last year, we're doing everything in our power to make it work, and the vendors certainly doing the same. So it's definitely an efficient type of working environment, a relationship, and we're going to make that work. It's just going to take some time.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any other questions for the chief? Okay, thank you. And we'll continue on with council reports, and I'll start on my right with Mr. Cohen. Any reports? We can come back if you think of a report. All right, Ms. Howard, any reports?
Just want to plead to everyone, if you have not gotten your flu shot, it is not too late in this season, and we're all, and I say this with a ratchety voice, it's a virus, not the flu, but Lance and David, right, yeah, sorry, yeah, right. We don't have any more flu shot clinics planned for the municipality, but your doctor's office or the pharmacy, or if where you normally receive healthcare does not have it, call the health department and they can help you find find a clinic that does. It's not too late, and even though there have been, the reports are accurate that the flu vaccine does not match up well against the flu strain that's out there, it still provides some protection, and it's very important to get vaccinated. So it really has been, the stories have been really shocking, as you've seen, and I was just happened to be over at the hospital, and they're seeing many cases, so encouraging people.
No, just briefly, the Princeton Alcohol and Drug Alliance Educational Committee, we're putting together a vapor forum that will take place in April or May. We have a few dates, and will probably be held in this room. We have the opening dates for this room, and we're going to have experts come in to talk to parents in regard to vaping, which is extremely being used all over. And kids are vaping things that they shouldn't be vaping today. So it's going to be very informative. Please look out for the date. We'll have the date soon, and it should be a wonderful program.
Thank you. Ms. Miller?
Well, I just wanted to ask, Lance, do you?
Yes. Yes, there's many things that they can put in those vapors as of today.
I have two quick reports. The Civil Rights Commission met on January 16th to reorganize and set goals for 2018. I'm sure my colleagues saw reports in multiple media outlets regarding a complaint referred to the Commission's Conflict Resolution Committee for voluntary dialogue. As a result of the publicity, the leadership of the Commission decided against proceeding with the planned session, believing that the process as outlined in the ordinance reestablishing the Commission works best when confidentiality is maintained. This case points to a need for Council to support the Commission as it better explains its charge, which is primarily to advise Council and educate the community about matters of bias and discrimination. Additionally, the Commission does provide voluntary, non-binding conflict resolution sessions. I think it's incumbent upon Council to clarify the procedures for conflict resolution as outlined in the ordinance to balance the public nature of the Commission as an advisory commission to Council, and how the Commission knows that the conflict resolution process works best, which is when there's at least some expectation of confidentiality. So I don't know whether, Mayor, you had given this some thought, or?
Yeah, well, I would recommend we put together a small group from Council to review the materials and review them for clarity and to help. I think what you're saying is right. I mean, I think everybody agrees with the process. It's more just making sure we're communicating that in a way where people who want to use the service understand what exactly is being offered. So I hope you're volunteering yourself, Mr. Quinn.
I would, and I'm looking for volunteers to join me.
And Ms. Fraga, will you help with that? And then Mr. Liverman, terrific.
Thank you.
All
We'll
right.
put together a meeting.
Thank you. Ms. Fraga, okay. I have several reports. Oh, Mr. Cohen?
I did think of a couple of things I wanted to
Okay,
mention.
oh, great. Yeah, go ahead.
So, number one, on Thursday the 1st, I attended the Central Jersey Forum on transportation, and just wanted to mention in passing that one of the presentations was about smart growth, and Princeton was flashed up on the screen with a time-lapse photography over the last 40 or 50 years showing us as being an exemplar of smart growth in Princeton, or in New Jersey. So I wanted to mention that. And the other thing that I wanted to mention is at the last Citizens Finance Advisory Committee meeting, we requested that the group undertake a study of the impact, the financial impact of the recommendations of the parking consultant study, and that they've I believe, agreed to take that on as a task for the coming months. So.
Fantastic. Yeah, we'll look forward to having them be part of the conversations on that. I have several reports. The first one is more of a just reminder to my colleagues, and I'm going to try to send out an email to, if you remember, we met, I think, the first week of the year to set out our goals and priorities for the year, and we were all going to be reaching out to our boards and commissions that we're liaison to help work out what those priorities were at the board and commission level, and send those both to myself and to Mark so we can put together the full list. And given that it's February, it would be good to, we always have, one of our goals is always to figure out what our goals are at the beginning of the year, and it's we have to do it
Before the
soon
end
or
of
it
the
will no
year.
longer be the beginning of the year. All right. Okay. We heard during public comment about Griggs Farm, and I wanted to raise this as a possibility to council. There is an available unit, an empty unit at the Waxwood. It's one of the units that is restricted with the neighborhood preference. And I wanted to see if there would be, if there's a consensus to give Mr. DeShield the ability to sort of work to see on a temporary basis only for one of the families that have been displaced by, or individuals that have been displaced by the Griggs Farm fire, to have them stay in this unit at the Waxwood up to probably about 12 months, but whenever the Griggs unit is in shape for them to move back into.
The beauty of this is that the Waxwood has an elevator. So for the seniors, the 4 seniors that we have in place yet, this could be a viable option.
For one of them.
For
please.
one of them.
Yeah.
So I would like to make a motion that we go ahead and allow
I'll second that.
a Waxwood.
Well, I assume it's been vacant for a while. Is that
I think so,
the
yeah.
It
issue?
has
Okay.
been,
Yeah, I believe
yeah,
so.
but it would be for somebody who doesn't meet the neighborhood preference qualification, and just to make it available for them temporarily. All right, so is all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And that was moved by Mr. Liverman and seconded by Ms. Howard. Okay, thanks. Great, thank you. And then I also wanted to get consensus from council on this next item. The zoning board, in their 2017 annual report, suggested that the standards for rooftop solar panels be relaxed so that they did not need to conform with the setback as long as they were not higher than 6 inches on a roof. Our zoning department has had to deny several zoning permits in the past few months because they did not comply with the setback limits. And the question to council is, would there be support for fast-tracking an ordinance that would make it easier to permit the solar panels?
When you refer to the setback, do you mean the height to setback ratio?
I think that's what it is. Yeah, it's essentially the thickness of the solar panel bumps up the height so that it no longer complies.
Yeah. I mean, that seems reasonable to me to,
Is there,
that's a
okay,
de minimis. Yeah.
terrific. All right, so I'll get that word out. I'm not sure how quickly it's gonna, they can put something together, but given that there's been several incidents of this causing a problem. Okay, good.
Yeah, and it would be restricted to renovations, not new construction.
I can pass that along.
Okay.
Yeah,
Just because we know that,
right.
Yeah.
Okay, this has gotten a little bit of press already. I was attending last week, there was a meeting of the New Jersey Conference of Mayors down in Trenton, and Governor Murphy was one of the speakers, and he called on the legislature to provide authorizing legislation that would allow residents and towns in New Jersey to divert property tax payments to local charitable funds so that residents can maintain the charitable donation that people, the full charitable donation that people used to have under the state and local tax deductions for federal taxes. there was some pushback from the state legislators who were there, and I think we're in a watch and wait situation here. I mean, I think we want to keep our eye on it, but I don't think that there's any action we can take now. Just only to let our residents know, we hear you that the tax bill for a lot of people is going to be a severe burden, and we're hoping to provide whatever relief we're allowed to provide.
Are you able to describe the nature of the pushback from the
pushback
legislators?
is that we could pass state legislation, but the IRS is not necessarily going to say that it's okay.
Yeah, and I think there's a valid concern that the IRS would disallow it. So it does seem like we should be watching and be ready to jump when there's clarity, but we shouldn't be spending resources investigating it, because presumably the league is going to work with the governor's office, and this is just a watch and wait, right?
Exactly. Yeah, I've reached out to the league, and their initial analysis was that it was probably going to take authorizing legislation at the state level and also at the federal level. So.
Good luck. So
don't hold your breath.
It's a
for
long
that.
shot.
Yeah, we might be waiting for a while. But they were still looking into it. That was just the initial.
I'll just say that, if there's enabling legislation at the state level, we'll have a decision to make, because the people I've talked to have been pretty unanimous that there's no way that the IRS would allow it. But, strategically, as a kind of civil disobedience, it might be something that states want to do to force the IRS to expend resources to fight it. So
Right.
we would have to decide, once the legal picture became a little clearer, whether we wanted to embroil ourselves in that kind of a fight.
Right, exactly.
I'll just say on that point that the president's proposed budget, which was unveiled today, contains drastic cuts to social safety net programs, but increases in the IRS for enforcement. So they're gearing up. So we will need to as well. Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. The seamless or the website redesign is in full swing. And we've put up a seamless survey online to get feedback from residents and other users of the website. So I encourage everybody to go online if you want to get your feedback in before we launch the new site. I also attended a climate conference put on by Sustainable Jersey last weekend, and they rolled out criteria for gold status in energy. So as we all know, Princeton has silver certification, and right now silver is the highest level you can attain. Well, it used to be the highest level you could obtain with Sustainable Jersey. Now they have a gold for, and the gold is going to be by different categories. So they've outlined what the criteria are for energy, and Princeton is well positioned to be able to put in a successful application based on the work we're doing. And then I just wanted to add to Mr. Cohen's report from the Central Jersey Transportation Forum. We also heard a presentation about the renaming of 95. If you haven't paid attention to this, you might want to pay attention to it. So I-95 is becoming I-295 in New Jersey, and all of the exits are going to be renumbered. They're already starting to do some of the work out there, but especially for if there's any local businesses that are listening, or for the university, anybody who's directing people in from out of town, everyone's going to need to redo their directions, and there might be some confusion.
Wait, you mean starting at the bridge?
Yes.
It's 295?
At the Scudder's Fall Bridge.
It's like north and south. I mean, it's...
Yes,
It's-
so there's
it's
some
completely-
documentation about it on the municipal website, and it takes you to all of the DOT information. But they're moving ahead with it, and I think everything's supposed to be done during 2018. So just a warning. And are there any staff reports, Mr. Shield?
As mayor and councils are aware, this year received a large number of prepayments at the beginning of the year. As part of that process, the Finance Office, we've had some discussions and would like to recommend a policy because we began to receive some requests for refunds. And the policy we would like to put in place would be that there will be no refunds for the first and second quarter of taxes. Once the third and fourth quarter taxes are billed, we would then process any refunds at that point, if there are refunds after the billing period. And if that's okay with the council, we'll move forward in that direction.
Can you explain why?
Really, in terms of just processing all of the refunds, quite frankly, the first and second quarter, it's here. Those should be applied. Third and fourth quarter, it just makes sense at the end, once we know what the billing is, to apply it to the billing and then provide them any refunds of any excess.
So how many have we gotten? How many requests for refunds?
At this point, it just started with a handful, so we're just
Like 5?
anticipating.
Less
I'm
than
not
that,
sure.
or just? I'm
Probably
just
just-
curious, because,
I don't know the exact number, but
Okay.
it was just a couple. But we
Okay.
want to have a policy before we get a large.
yeah, I just was curious, because how many people, we know that we got 28 million in prepayment, but I don't know how many taxpayers does anybody know that offhand? No?
Okay. Any other reports? Ms. Stockton, any reports? No? Okay, great. All right, so we'll move on then to our work session for this evening, which is on the 2018 municipal budget. And tonight's work session is going to cover some of the big ticket items, and everybody on council has their budget books here, and we'll be going into more detail, and we'll have some more time next Wednesday morning's meeting as well.
As we wait for the projector to come up, as the mayor has indicated, you have your budget books in front of you this evening. Just wanted to give you some idea what you'll find in the budget books. In your budget books, you'll find summaries for the expenditures and the revenues. You'll also see salary and wage summaries for all of the departments, along with a head count for each one of the departments. And finally, you'll see a detailed other expense breakout. And as the mayor indicated, this evening we're really going to look at the major policy areas where I need some direction from council. And then next week, next Wednesday, we'll take a deeper dive into the other expenses and look at areas where we may want to look at additional reductions.
So, Mark, is this available to the public, or, because I know that in the borough we had a problem, I think I've talked to Sandy, and it was really hard to produce this budget, this format electronically in like PDF. Do you know if that's possible?
It may be possible.
Okay.
To produce it. One of the things right now, once we do the introduction, we'll be providing everything to the public at that point that we have. Once we introduce the budget, this is working.
I think this is a really good format, and we should make it public if possible.
Yes, but
Okay, I just was wondering about that, because
I'll
we had trouble doing that before, and I don't know if things have changed and it's easier.
I think we should be able, I think we should be able to do that. It shouldn't be a problem at all to produce that. Thank you. Oh, I got it. Thank you. I'd like to begin this evening and talk about what are the expenditure drivers in the 2018 budget. As you can see on the sheet in front of you, the major drivers in our budget this year are public employees retirement system, which is increased by $999,000. Payment of bonds has increased $350,000. Interest on bonds, $500,000. That is a direct result. Last year we went out to sell bonds. We're now paying the first year in bond payments. That has increased quite a bit. In addition, you'll see deferred charges for future taxation at $700,000. That includes the $200,000 in capital expenditures that we pay for cash capital, and then $500,000 in which we're using to pay down old capital projects that can no longer be bonded, and we have to raise cash to pay those projects off. And what's interesting, if you look at this, you'll see that there's $1.4 million in expenditure increases in the budget. If you look at the total budget increase this year, it's only 1.2. And that's because in other areas of budget, we've made some serious decisions in terms of expenditures, both in terms of the 911 telecommunications and in other areas that have reduced our costs. So what's really running this budget this year is the bond principal, which is a very big part of that, and paying for that capital debt. That being the case, we want to look at how can we kind of address those issues. With the increase in debt, the one of the things that we can do is use capital surplus. We have a debt service policy, which I talked about at our last meeting. Part of that policy wants us to keep our debt service increase at about 1.5%. We have funds in our capital reserve or capital surplus that we can use to do that. So I'm recommending that we move into our revenues, $381,400 in capital surplus. That will reduce that burden on the bond component to only increase by 1.5%. So that's the first recommendation that I would give to council. In addition to that, we need to address the issue of the $1.5 million in old capital that needs to be paid for. And there's two options that we have to do that. The first option is what we have in the budget, which is to take $500,000 for each year in our budget and pay it off over a 3-year period. The second option is to actually pay it off, the $1.5 million in 1 year, and use our surplus to add $1.5 million in surplus, therefore reducing the need for raising any taxes, but paying it out of our surplus.
Can you repeat that? I'm sorry.
What we want to do is $1.5 million we will take out of our surplus as revenue to counteract the $1.5 million in expenditures. Therefore, we won't have to increase taxes at all to pay that off. And that's actually what I would recommend council do. What that does is two things. One, it will pay off the old debt. It will then decrease $500,000 in the budget for this year as we have it this year, because we have $500,000 to pay off the debt for the 3 years, will be reduced in our budget. So my recommendation is we go with the second option, which is to pay off the old debt in 1 year, the $1.5 million.
Has there been a calculation in terms of what the impact would be on the surplus?
We're going to talk about that
Okay.
next. One of the things that we look at in terms of surplus, and I'll just jump ahead just a little bit. This year's surplus, we looked at our initial estimates of surplus. Surplus is actually increasing $1.6 million this year. We would actually be able to pay this off just on the increase in surplus and be able to regenerate what we've normally generated in surplus over the last couple of years. So this is actually an opportunity for us, since we did generate $1.6 million in additional surplus this year than what we had last year. It's really a great opportunity to use that surplus to pay that down. So let's just talk about revenue decreases. The other area in which we have a concern is, as we've been talking for a number of years, some of our reserve for debt service, and that $750,000 is going away this year. When we've been talking about, we've been weaning our way off of this revenue for a number of years. We'll also see $100,000 in the reserve for premiums and debt coming off the revenues. In addition to that, we have the reserve for debt service of $85,000. So a total loss in revenues of about $1 million this year. That's a big hit to take in 1 year's budget. So my other recommendation with the increase in surplus would be to use additional surplus, and we kind of talk about that in the next slide, use additional surplus to kind of help us work our way through these loss in revenues. So what I'm recommending that council do this year is add additional $250,000 in surplus this year and $125,000 in 2019. And this is based on the fact that, one, we are growing our surplus at a rate that's higher than we anticipated last year as we did our projections. In addition, we do expect we will regenerate at least what we had last year. So I don't believe there will be a negative impact on our surplus. In addition to that, if you look at our surplus, we're probably, the policy says we should be between 15% of our revenues, 15 and 20% of our revenues. We're at the higher end of that. We actually have the ability to take some more surplus out, and this is a good reason to use our surplus. So what I need in terms of council's consensus, do we want to go for paying it off over 3 years or actually do a 1-year payoff of the old capital? And that's one area which I need council's approval or authorization.
Mayor.
Well, is there a
I was
downside?
going to, Mr. Cohen and then Ms. Cramiller.
Yeah. I just wanted to comment that we did discuss this at the Citizen Finance Advisory Committee, and the recommendation of the financial professionals was pretty unanimous that the accelerated payoff was a good thing financially. There was a little bit of concern that it would cause a bump in the budget by including all $1.5 million. That would, might raise concerns among people who are looking carefully at the budget, but that could be addressed in the newsletter, the explanatory newsletter that goes out with the taxes.
Ms. Cramiller?
Right. Although, why would we even, isn't that obvious? It seemed like it was an obvious choice, but you don't feel it is an obvious choice?
It pretty much is an obvious choice.
Okay.
I'm recommending it.
Okay, that's what I thought. I just wondered if there was something I was missing.
The only reason the current budget has the $500,000 over 3 years is what I talked to you about. Previously, after our conversation at CFAC, we had that discussion, and that's why I'm giving you option 2 at this point.
I have a question just about the being $1.6 million over the surplus from last year. And was that expected, or because normally CFAC does a model of what they're aiming for or what they're expecting, and do you have a sense
We
of
actually
if it's off?
we generated more than we anticipated in our projection that we did. We actually generated more. That's one area that we're going to definitely look at a little closely again this year. And hopefully at our meeting on the 26th, we'll have another kind of look at an estimate of surplus going into next year and to try to address that issue.
Okay.
I think it was somewhat clear that it wasn't sort of surplus revenue. It was lower spending that was the cause of the surplus, the above expected surplus, right?
Actually, we don't have that. Could be one area, but there also was additional, I think, revenue we may have received. We want to do a deep analysis to really find an answer. But that was one of the big issues that we kind of came off first. So the final piece that I want to talk about are some adjustments. The staff has gone through the budget in terms of, one thing I didn't talk about was where the budget stands in terms of increase in the amount to be raised or what will be raised for taxation. The initial budget that was presented to you was at about, and that was a budget without doing any adjustments to it, was about 7%. With the adjustments just recommended with the $1 million that we just talked about, $1.5 million plus the $250,000, we would be at about just above a 2% increase in the levy. And that does not include any other adjustments that we had at this point. So we're also recommending, after staff has reviewed the budget, looking at Stony Brook and some history in terms of what we expect to pay to the Sewage Authority, that we reduce that by $75,000. We've also took a look at the New Jersey Environmental Trust Fund. And in that case, we have to make a guess each year what debt will be coming in this year. In reviewing it closely after the end of the year, we believe we can reduce that about $90,000. And we do have some money in a FEMA grant that is required to offset a salary. We can apply that to and the Office of Emergency Management in the amount of $50,000. So we can make an adjustment on the expenditure side of the budget of about $215,000, just adjustments based on looking a little bit closer at the numbers in the budget. So we'll make that adjustment, and then on Wednesday we'll go through the budget, and you'll have a chance to look at the other expenditure side of the budget and make some recommendations at that point. Any questions?
Yeah, Ms. Howard?
So, thanks, Mark. This is terrific as usual, and but it seems like you focused on sort of that we have a revenue problem, right? And that's something you've been drilling in, and that's great. But I don't want us to lose sight, I guess, of what we can do on the spending side. And I know I'm a broken record, but our two new colleagues haven't heard this yet of my idea. You can probably guess what I'm going to say, which is that I really still think we ought to, maybe not technically a hiring freeze, but sort of a rebuttable presumption that we're not hiring unless it's risen to the level of us sort of deciding that it's a position we need to fill, or something where we're putting the brakes on spending side. I mean, even just what I heard you saying is like and that we inevitably end up with the 2%, right? And especially, I'm worried with the expiration of the cap on police and fire, where that's going to hit us in the out years, right? And so, all at the same time, think about this perfect storm, where with the elimination of the SALT deduction, right? And so, where people are being hit by the impact of the federal changes in federal tax law. So you're totally right to focus on this revenue problem we have, but it just seems like we still have to go back to the spending problem and the inevitable growth in spending, and how do we put the brakes on it. And so I would propose, I mean, it's not like a proposal like we have to vote on it, but I would encourage us to consider sort of, again, instituting some of those controls that are natural brakes on the growth of spending, and it's, that are consistent with what the state always has to do. I mean, it's just, you put those checks in, and then so anytime there's a new hire, it has to go through a more rigorous review of, do we really need, is there somebody where we can move around, can we, and that kind of creativity has worked well for us, I think, in the past, when you think about how we've handled Access Princeton and the absorption into the clerk's office, and our fabulous assistant administrator who's holding many hats, so the sort of creativity born by a little bit of that forced new thinking. So I'll take off but that's my plea again. So while today is really about the revenue problem we have, which is important to remember that we do have, there are things we can do on the expenditure side, especially because I just think Lance and I won't be here, but I think the expiration of that cap is really going to hit us in the out years, and we will be, we will regret not if we haven't tried to institute these controls.
So are you talking about adopting a policy of some sort? Because I think we did do that before consolidation. I mean, I think each municipality had a formal policy.
You're right, actually we did, because we were worried about that there'd be a little bit of gaming.
Right, each of us,
not
we both
that our friends in the other municipality would ever do that, but right, that there was a little bit of a let's freeze before we come in and reconsider. I mean, ideally, I would love us to adopt that. I mean, some of this, I think it actually helps Mark. Mark's got to go back, and I think Mark needs to hear from us the broad directives, and it's helpful to Mark if he can go back to staff and say, council is really serious, right?
Right, that we don't just automatically, are you saying we don't automatically
so you don't automatically replace anybody, right?
But aren't we doing that now? I thought, in a way, I know in personnel we discussed this.
Quite frankly, I do that as a matter of course, but it's an informal problem.
But yes, a more formal process that I think adds some weight to that, Jenny, that is us saying, that we want to sign off on every new hire. And it's not that we won't, but if you come in and you say, the leaves aren't going to get picked up if you don't let me hire on Aiken Avenue. Specifically, but no, I mean, I think that's what a rebuttable presumption is that the weight you have to make, and then sometimes when like we did with some of these other times where we found those efficiencies, it's really sort of forced people to be more creative. I mean, I know from my time in state service that there's nothing that makes you more creative than being told no a couple times, right? So
that's a great idea.
Any other comments on the budget at this point? Mr. Liverman?
No, just a great job. Thank you.
And
You
again,
and
I'm
Sandy,
available.
thank
Any
you.
questions you may have concerning, as you go through the budget books, just feel free to give me a call.
Okay. I want to thank Sandy Webb, too, for all her work and bringing us to this point. And this is to be continued on next Wednesday morning. Everyone's invited, 8:30 a.m. In the community room. Okay. Next, we come to our ordinance public hearings. And the first public hearing is 2018-1, an ordinance of the Municipality of Princeton increasing the number of members on the Citizens Finance Advisory Committee and amending Section 2-111 of the Code of the Township of Princeton, New Jersey, 1968, and Section 2-84 of the Code of the Borough of Princeton, New Jersey, 1974. I'd like to open up the public hearing on this ordinance. And seeing no one, I will close the public hearing. And is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Liverman and seconded by Ms. Howard. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Yes.
Yes. Mr. Liverman?
Yes.
Ms. Krummiller?
Yes.
Mr. Quinn?
Yes.
Ms. Fraga?
Yes.
And the ordinance passes unanimously. Next is ordinance 2018-2, an ordinance of the Municipality of Princeton authorizing to vacate an existing sanitary sewer easement on Block 31.04, Lot 21, 260 Hawthorne Avenue on the Princeton Municipal Tax Map. I'd like to open up the public hearing on this ordinance. And seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing. And is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Cohen and seconded by Ms. Krummeller. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Ms. Howard? Yes. Mr. Liverman?
Yes.
Ms. Krummiller?
Yes.
Mr. Quinn?
Yes.
Ms. Fraga?
Yes.
And that ordinance also passes unanimously. And next we come to our ordinance introductions for this evening. The first is 2018-3, ordinance amending the Code of the Township of Princeton, New Jersey, 1968, to establish a 4-ton weight limit on Olden Lane. I want to open it up to any comments. Yeah, Mr. Cohen?
I had a question that I had emailed to Mr. DeShield. I don't know if there's an answer to it, but since the ordinance refers to the similar weight limit that's already existing on Princeton Pike and Mercer Street and Lover's Lane, I don't know how trucks that are over a 4-ton limit would get to Olden Lane. And number two, I know from serving on planning board that there's a lot of documentation that there are trucks that are bigger than 4 tons that are traveling on Olden Lane regularly. And I'm curious what the enforcement of the existing weight limits is. All right. That's why I gave you a heads up.
One of the inquiries was kind of what the ordinance, the purpose of the ordinance. One is, it's kind of in reaction. Neighbors had some concerns. We wanted to make sure it was clear that there was a weight limit in the area.
Okay. I see that Chief Sutter snuck out before my question. So he can't answer the question about how we're enforcing those weight limits currently because, as I say, there's a lot of documentation that's been presented to us at the last meeting as well as to the planning board that there are many, many trucks that are exceeding that weight limit that are traveling along Olden Lane.
I'm almost
I do know staff is.
I'm almost sure that we mentioned before that if there was a circumstance that you can get special permission or waiver from the police department, I know they even mentioned escorting at one time if there was something larger. So I think that's how they probably handle it.
I think that my understanding for this ordinance is it's just trying to clarify on Olden Lane in particular because of the complaints we're hearing from the neighbors. So it's establishing that so it can be enforced on Olden Lane and also so that there can be signage put up. Because oftentimes that if you're a truck and you get in the wrong spot because it's confusing or it can be confusing and then you don't know where to go and you're trying to turn around, you can end up turning around on the wrong street also. So I think the intention is just to, even though it might seem redundant, is just to put it there in part so that there can be signage to address the neighborhood concern that we've heard
And
repeatedly.
enforcement, I would hope.
Yes, definitely.
Not
yeah.
just signage.
Right. Yeah, but I think you can't enforce it if it's not the rule.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other questions or comments from the public about this ordinance? All right. Is there a motion to introduce?
So moved.
Moved by
Second.
Ms. Crumiller and seconded by Mr. Quinn. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Yes.
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 And the ordinance has been introduced, and the public hearing will be on March 12, 2018. Next is 2018-4, a bond ordinance providing for sanitary sewer improvements on Linden Lane, Nassau Street to Henry Avenue, and Spruce Street in and by Princeton in the county of Mercer, New jersey, appropriating $471,000 therefore, authorizing the issuance of $450 bonds or notes of Princeton for financing the cost thereof, and directing the special assessment of part of the cost thereof. Are there any questions about this ordinance, or is there a motion to introduce?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Crumiller and seconded by Mr. Liverman. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Ms. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Liverman?
Yes.
Ms. Crummiller?
Yes.
Mr. Quinn?
Yes.
Ms. Fraga?
Yes.
The ordinance has been introduced, and the public hearing will be on March 12th, 2018. Next is 2018-5, an ordinance authorizing the transfer of vacant real property located at 224 Cherry Valley Road and designated as Block 601, Lot 2 on the Princeton tax maps to the New Jersey Conservation Foundation. And I believe this ordinance is a small piece of property we've talked about before, and it's the New Jersey Conservation Foundation has agreed to be the manager of that piece of property.
Yeah,
And
I
Ms.
bet it's less than 2 acres.
More than the manager, they'll own it.
Oh, an owner too.
Yeah.
Even better. All right. All right. Any questions from council on this ordinance? Is there a motion to introduce?
So moved. Second.
Moved by Mr. Liverman and seconded by Ms. Crumiller. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Ms. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Liverman?
Yes.
Ms. Crummiller?
Yes.
Mr. Quinn?
Yes.
And Ms. Fraga?
Yes.
And the ordinance has been introduced, and the hearing will be on March 12th, 2018. Next, we come to resolutions. The first resolution is 1864, resolution authorizing a construction contract bid award to V&K Construction Incorporated of Edison, New Jersey, in an amount not to exceed $794,404 for the Mary Moss Playground. And congratulations on making it to this stage. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Cohen and seconded by Mr. Liverman. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, resolution passes unanimously. And I just a quick question about when do you expect construction to start?
The contractor can start at any time once the construction contracts are signed and all of the paperwork is in order. We will be contacting him probably tomorrow to set up the kickoff meeting, and construction is set in the contract to be completed by June 14th. 2018, and that allows us to open the park up for the summer season, and it also allows us to clear out of the affordable housing lot next door, as they are planning to start construction right around that same time.
Terrific.
I had a question for Deanna. I wanted to clarify, it came up at the Witherspoon Jackson Neighborhood Association meeting on Saturday, and I want to make sure I didn't give inaccurate information. We do have plans to put in a temporary speed table on John Street near the playground. Is that still part of the plan?
Yes, we are in process of purchasing rubber pads that would actually be, they're speed cushions rather than a speed table. So the way they're set up, they have a valley between the raised portions that accommodate the axle of the larger emergency vehicles, but regular sized vehicles would have to traverse one of the bumps in going through the area. So we're trying them out first as temporary, but our construction contract does allow for construction in a more permanent manner in asphalt.
Thank you. And there'll be room for cyclists to ride around these,
Yes, definitely.
one would hope.
Only going northbound with traffic.
Excellent. All right. Next is Resolution 1865, resolution authorizing the award of a contract to Sewer Equipment Company of America through JetVac Equipment LLC via the National Joint Powers Alliance NJPA contract for sewer cleaning and hydro excavating equipment. Contract number 022014-SCA for a 900 Eco Truck mounted combination sewer cleaner in the amount of $360,597.75. And I've been assured by Mr. Huff that this is money well spent.
This is the heart and soul of the sewer operator.
All right.
We have good sewer, as you know, we have sewers to be proud of in Princeton. And I say that in all, I'm not being funny, I really do.
Undergirds everything we do.
All right. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Quinn.
Second?
And seconded by Mr. Liverman. Any further discussion on this? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, resolution passes unanimously. Next is 1866, resolution authorizing the extension of the existing contract with Central Jersey Waste and Recycling Incorporated for organic waste collection for 4 months, February 1st, 2018 to May 31st, 2018, in an amount not to exceed $75,000. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Quinn.
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Krummeller. Any discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Resolution passes unanimously. Next is 1867, resolution authorizing a professional services agreement with Miller, Porter, and Muller, P.C. for representing the Princeton Planning Board for 2018 in an amount not to exceed $34,000.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Liverman. Seconded by Ms. Krummeller. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Resolution passes unanimously. Next is 1868, resolution authorizing a professional services agreement with BRB Evaluation and Consulting Services, East Hampton, New Jersey, to assist the Princeton tax assessor and Princeton special counsel for property tax appeals for 2018 for an amount not to exceed $15,000. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Krummeller.
Second?
And seconded by Mr. Liverman. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Resolution passes unanimously. Next is 1869, resolution authorizing the award of a bid for the purchase of police camera and trailer equipment to Industrial Video and Control Company in the amount not to exceed $56,423.
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Howard.
Second?
And seconded by Mr. Liverman.
Well, and this is being paid for by a grant.
That's right.
Yes.
This is really neat. This is an FBI grant to the police department as a result of some collaborative efforts, and so it's at no cost to us. Some neat equipment enhancements.
And it's for the car? Am I?
No. It's
for the-
it's some video equipment that they'll be able to use for large events.
Okay.
So
It goes up high.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's not body cameras. It's
Okay,
like
yes.
cameras up high.
Yes.
that
so
they
for
can
like
see.
the marathon and community and
Excellent.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Resolution passes unanimously. Next is 1870, resolution authorizing the award of a contract to Sustainable Princeton for 2018 to provide various services and programs to assist the municipality to achieve its sustainability goals in an amount not to exceed $30,000. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Quinn.
Second?
Seconded by Mr. Liverman. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Resolution passes unanimously. Next is 1871, resolution authorizing the purchase of affordable housing unit and temporary rental 231 Brickhouse Road in the amount of $78,483.57. Is there a motion to approve? Moved by
Second.
Mr. Liverman and seconded by Ms. Krummeller. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Resolution passes unanimously. Next is 1872, resolution authorizing subsidy payment to affordable housing seller 228 Brick House Road in the amount of $28,356.60. Is there a motion to approve? Moved by Mr.
moved.
Liverman
Second.
and seconded by Ms. Krummeller. Any discussion on this one? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Resolution passes unanimously. And next is 1873, resolution in opposition to the proposed New Jersey Department of Agriculture beekeeping regulations. And is there a motion to approve? Moved by
Second.
Ms. Krummeller and seconded by Mr. Quinn. Any discussion on this?
Bzzz.
Was recommended by PEC.
And it was recommended
You
by
heard a
PEC.
lengthy presentation about beekeeping and the effects of these proposed regs.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, resolution passes unanimously. And next we can come to the consent agenda, which contains items of a routine nature passed by a single vote. And I just wanted to draw everyone's attention there. I think I sent it out over email and it's correct online, but there were there's one addition to the Economic Development Commission, which I had left off. Kristen Applegate, she'll be a member. And then with the boards and commissions, Lisa Sarasol is going to have a dual appointment. And are there any items anybody would like removed from the consent agenda? Nope. All right. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Krummeller and seconded by Mr. Liverman. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Third.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.